Hello, everyone. This is Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host. We have got another episode of a very popular show here on Live Life Well TV that we call America's Greatest Personalities. And this episode, we're going to pay tribute to one of America's greatest personalities, at least in my view, Carol Burnett. Stay tuned. You know, to me, Carol Burnett is somebody that I feel I have always known. I really had to stop and think if I had ever met her personally, and I haven't. Nevertheless, there's just something about her that makes her assume the role of extended family to me. And I think that has a lot to do with the incredible lady that she truly is. She wears her heart on her sleeve. She's passionate about what she does because she understands how important laughter is to heal one's soul. There are so many things that I think are so wonderful about Carol Burnett. We're going to cover a lot of them in the short time that we have together in this episode. But let's start off with some things that she is famous for saying. The great Carol Burnett once said, "Comedy is tragedy plus time." She also said, "Adolescence is just one big walking pimple." I can attest to that. She also has said giving birth is like taking your lower lip and forcing it over your head. She also has said we don't stop going to school when we graduate. She is also famous for saying, and I love this, when you have a dream, you've got to grab it and never let go. Carol has also said, I think we're here for each other. And finally, this great lady has been quoted as saying this, I liked myself better when I wasn't me. What an amazing story this wonderful lady has. And here is some of it. Carol Creighton Burnett was born on April 26, 1933 in San Antonio, Texas. Did she have a happy childhood? Well, if you listen to this great lady tell it, the answer that she would say to that question would be mostly no, but just a little bit yes. Carol allegedly had alcoholic parents who often found it hard to get along with one another. When her parents divorced, Carol and her half-sister packed up whatever they had and moved in with Carol's grandmother, who lived in a rooming house in not one of the best areas of Hollywood. Carol was once asked how her childhood helped shape her comedy, and the following is what she said. We were on relief, which is welfare, and my grandmother would save her pennies so that we could go to the movies. This was our respite. I was raised in that fantasy world of the 1940s, where in the movies, everything came out okay. There was no cynicism in the movies. The bad guys got it in the end, and the good people always survived, and there was music. If there was violence, she went on to say, it wasn't as graphic as it is now. I actually came away with a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland mentality that if you had a show in a barn, you could put it on and then it would wind up on Broadway. There was no cynicism. If you think about it, there's actually a lot of truth contained in that statement by Carol. There's a lot about Carol, and there's a lot about the media in that statement in general. Now, she was living in Hollywood. Carol took a number of jobs, including that of an usherette at a Hollywood movie theater, just to help bring money in. She would graduate from Hollywood High in 1951 and went on to win a scholarship to the University of California at Los Angeles. She actually, believe it or not, wanted to become a playwright. But to do so, she had to take an acting class at UCLA. Was she excited about this? Probably not. But when she got her first big laugh from an audience at the school when she was on stage, it was a sensation, an energy, a feeling, and a laugh that she would never, ever forget. And it was a laugh that she wanted to hear over and over and over. In 1954, Carol would arrive in New York City. In 1955, she would get a summer stock gig in the Adirondacks that was simply amazing. So if you don't know what summer stock is, if you're back in the day, I don't even know if there's summer stock anymore. But back in the day, if you wanted to become an actor or an actress, one of the things you did very early in your fledgling career was do summer stock, as it says, during the summer. And that meant you would go to some town and they would have a summer theater company. And you would stay in that town for about maybe 3 to 4 months during the summer, and you would constantly put on different plays with that theater company. And most likely, most of the time, 95% of the time, you were performing with other up and coming actresses who wanted to get that kind of experience under their belts. And that's just what Carol did at summer stock in the Adirondacks. In that summer stock, the actors would have to do, get this, an original musical comedy review every Friday and Saturday. Then on Sunday, each player could do their own acts in a variety type show. So in other words, every Sunday, there was a different variety show. And if that isn't enough, on Tuesdays, every Tuesday, they would have to do a play, a different play every Tuesday. And if that wasn't enough, on Thursdays, they would have to appear in an operetta. Most of the time, Carol was in all of those. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? This was perfect early experience to set her up for the Carol Burnett show, right? Each week in summer stock, there would be a new musical comedy show, a new variety show, and a new operetta. Now, if that wasn't good training in summer stock for her, I don't know what was. But more summer stock would follow for Carol. In 1957, she would land a job at a New York City nightclub called the Blue Angel, a very famous nightclub back in the day. During this time, Carol lived in a New York City brownstone building called the Rehearsal Club. This brownstone would house no less than 25 young ladies who all had their hearts set on a career in the theater, just like Carol had. Gentlemen callers were not allowed and strictly verboten above the first floor, and there was probably a strict curfew as well. These 25 young ladies had to be pursuing a career in the theater because their rents were subsidized by wealthy New Yorkers. So these monies were donated to this brownstone establishment under the proviso that these wealthy New Yorkers would gladly give this money only if these were up and coming actresses. With that in mind, get this, Carol's rent was only $18 a week. She also had a job as a waitress in a tea house, which allowed her to bring home $30 a week, minus the $18 for her room and board. In this brownstone, Carol was left with $12 to spend on anything else she wanted. If you happen to be familiar with the famous film Stage Door, Stage Door was based on that brownstone establishment where Carol was staying. Stage Door is a wonderful film that has many wonderful actresses in it. Katharine Hepburn, Lucille Ball, I think. The list goes on. I think Ann Miller was in that too, but I'm not 100% positive. Stage Door, see it if you can. It was a bit of a struggle making it as an actress in New York, as you can well imagine, but Carol's star was slowly starting to rise. And why wouldn't it be? I bet in those days she was brimming with talent. I don't think that's ever changed with her. To that end, back in that time, Carol would land two TV gigs. In 1955, she played a minor role on the Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney show. She also took a role alongside Buddy Hackett in a short-lived sitcom on TV called Stanley. Carol also became a huge hit, as you can well imagine, on the nightclub and cabaret club circuit in the greater New York metro area. This would lead to something amazing, something every up and coming comedian, singer, actor, actress would give their right arm for. Carol would get an appearance on The Tonight Show with Jack Paar, and if that wasn't enough, an appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show. Now, if you were lucky enough to get just one of those two gigs, you got it made. If you were good, if the audience liked you, if the television audience liked you, and if the host, Ed Sullivan or Jack Paar, liked you as well. Carol became a name overnight. Carol's father, unfortunately, had already passed away due to causes of alcoholism, but was her mother happy about her newfound success? It's actually an interesting question. Carol's mother allegedly had always wanted Carol to be a writer. Her mother allegedly once said, "You can always write no matter what you look like." Yikes. How sad to know that Carol's mother would pass on at about this period of time, just as Carol was making it big as an actress. 1959 was a big year for Burnett. She would appear in the 1959 Broadway musical Once Upon a Mattress. She would also become a regular on a very popular TV show in the day called The Garry Moore Show. In fact, Carol would remain a popular fixture on the Garry Moore TV show for the next 3 years. This led to an Emmy Award for a show called Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall. You can still find a couple of clips from that on YouTube. It was live on the stage of Carnegie Hall. Carol and her dear friend Julie Andrews hammed it up and did an incredible evening of entertainment. In 1963, Carol also happened to become close friends with somebody by the name of Lucille Ball. Lucy would have Carol appear on The Lucy Show quite often, but get this, Lucy would offer Carol her very own sitcom to be produced by Desilu, something I'm sure Lucy didn't offer a lot of other people. Carol, believe it or not, actually would decline the offer, but for a very good reason. She wanted to hold out for her very own show in a variety show type format. I think that what Lucy offered her was an episodic sitcom like I Love Lucy, but Carol wanted more of a variety show format. So she probably regrettably, but sensibly turned down Lucille Ball's offer. So think about this for a moment. Having done summer stock when she had started out, plus having the chance to appear on weekly TV variety shows, such as The Gary Moore Show, this would provide something that Carol would use for the rest of her life. That was the key to her success. You remember it well. It was the chance to play different characters. Think about it. If Carol had gone the route she originally wanted, which was Broadway, she would have played the same character each and every night. Also, I'm thinking if she had accepted the offer from Lucille Ball. If she had gotten her own TV sitcom, she would have had to think about it, play the same character, kind of like Lucy did each and every week. Appearing in a TV variety show, as I said before, would be perfect. So enter the one and only Carol Burnett Show. For 11 amazing years, from 1967 to 1978, Carol Burnett and her multi-talented team, her cast, made us laugh. They still do, because thank God you can find it on TV, you can find it on YouTube, and there's some wonderful DVDs of just about every episode of that show. She would keep us entertained until we don't even know where all those years that her show was actually on TV, where those years went. For those 11 years, one could very well have said that Carol Burnett was the undisputed queen of comedy TV. And maybe she still is and will always be. Just me interjecting there. Believe it or not, the network didn't want Carol to do a variety show. The network didn't think females could be successful doing a variety show on TV. Fortunately, Carol had it in her contract for that very first year of the Carol Burnett Show that she could pick, actually her very first year with the network, she could pick the type of show that she wanted to do. So that's cool. I'm so glad the network was open to giving Carol the choice of what she wanted to do. But that also means that the network knew what they had in Carol. Smart is something that the network was. This type of variety show wouldn't have been possible without the incredible supporting players Carol had the pleasure of working with each and every week. You know and remember them well: Tim Conway, Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, Lyle Wagner. And you remember the format of the Carol Burnett Show. There was the opening monologue of Carol's in front of the curtain. Then she took questions from the audience. There were those incredible skits. There was always a Broadway musical type number, and her legendary closing monologue back in front of the curtain. What would she always do during her closing monologue? Pretty much at the end of it, she would, a couple of things, but one of them she would sing. And these were the lyrics, because I am not going to sing it for you. I would do the great Carol Burnett an incredible, irreparable injustice. But here's the song. You probably remember it well. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh and sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. And then what would she always do? Do you know why she always did that? And you just might. It happened to have been a message to her grandmother, letting her know that everything was going well, to thank her for believing in her and supporting her those early years, and letting her know that she will always, always love her. I think it was also done as a way of respect, that finally somebody cared for her enough to help make her dreams possible. Some unforgettable skits that you really need to check out, let's say on YouTube. My favorite, The Dentist. Now, Carol's not in that one, but Harvey Korman and Tim Conway. I think it's the funniest clip I have ever seen in my life. I could watch it every day and it still continues to lift my spirits. It's called The Dentist. You can find it on YouTube. Of course, what everybody remembers in terms of skits with Carol, Gone with the Wind, or I think they call it Went with the Wind, with the famous curtain rod costume created by Bob Mackie. The Charwoman, a character she created on the Gary Moore Show, which she brought to the Carol Burnett Show. And of course, Mama's Family. This was Carol's favorite skit and role on the show. And of course, it went on to be its own recurring TV show too. After the Carol Burnett Show finished production, Carol would go on to make a number of films. By doing so, she showed the world that she was also adept at being a serious actress, as some of those films showed how talented and believable she was in the serious actress arena as well. Let's talk briefly about the Carol Burnett as a person, about Carol Burnett as a human being. Anybody and everybody I know that has met her and that has known her on a professional basis has always said the same thing, that Carol Burnett is a true, lovely, caring person. No diva antics, no Hollywood scenes or tantrums. She's had 2 marriages, unfortunately, both ending in divorce. A guy by the name of Don Saroyan was the first. They were together for 7 years. Joe Hamilton, a television producer, was her second husband. The marriage would last for 21 years. The Hamiltons would have 3 daughters. Unfortunately, Joe Hamilton would pass of cancer soon after he and Carol divorced. As you can probably well imagine, this crushed Carol, as they were still very good friends after they divorced. And to make matters worse, Carrie's wonderful, beautiful daughter, Carrie, would end up conquering a drug and alcohol addiction, only to pass from brain and lung cancer when she was just 38 years of age. As you can well imagine, this too was especially devastating for Carol, and I'm sure hit her very hard. The two, Carrie and Carol, had even worked together on a wonderful play about Carol's childhood and family. Carol also had to stand up and defend herself in a very public way. I wonder if you might remember this. Back in 1981, Carol sued the National Enquirer for libel after the tabloid said that she was drunk in public with Henry Kissinger as a witness. Of course, this was completely false and really hurt Carol because it brought back memories of her parents' plights with alcoholism. She sued the National Enquirer and won no less than $1.6 million, all of which she donated to charity. So, what is Carol Burnett like as a person? Just wonderful, as I alluded to before. This is a lady that, as I also alluded to before, wears her heart on her sleeve and is much more shy than you would normally think. Here's somebody who can attest to how wonderful Carol is. He once said, "I met Carol Burnett when I was 8 years old on a train platform in New York with my parents. She was starting out on the Gary Moore Show, and I was seeing my first Broadway show, The Music Man. I went up to her and asked for an address where I could write her because I loved her comedy and personality. I wrote to her for 33 years. In 1995, we met again at the McCarter Theater in Princeton, New Jersey. I brought all of my letters and pictures that we wrote to each other, and she invited me backstage to meet her. She came up to me and said, "Danny," and gave me a big hug. I was very pleased that we met, and I would love to meet her or write to her again. I'd love to have her over to my house for coffee and cake so my wife and I can talk about her career. And again, remember when I said at the beginning of this presentation that I feel that I've known Carol Burnett all along, but I've never met her. He did, and he is left with that warm, fuzzy feeling because he got to see and experience and feel who Carol Burnett really is. For many years now, the incomparable Carol Burnett has found well-deserved success working in film, TV, and the stage because that's just how versatile this wonderful lady really is. In closing, I would like to say that Carol Burnett was once asked if she had her career to do over again, would there be anything that she would do differently? And this is how she responded. No, it all happened the way it was supposed to. I wouldn't change a thing. I had such a great run. It's not like I turned down My Fair Lady. I never regretted turning down anything. I never regretted losing a job because I always felt something else was out there. In fact, when I was in New York in 1959, I was raising my kid's sister. I had done the Gary Moore Show, and I almost had the lead in a revival of the Broadway show Babes in Arms. They kept calling me back to sing a couple of songs, and it was like I had the part. The director wanted me, but then they decided that they wanted to go with a name. I cried a little when I got the word, and my kid's sister then said, "But Sissy, you always say, like Pollyanna, one door closes, another opens." I said, "You know what? You're right." I dried my eyes and the phone rang, and it was to come down and audition for George Abbott in Once Upon a Mattress. Babes in Arms never did open on Broadway. When I left UCLA, my classmates said, "What are you going to do when you get to New York, girl?" I said, "I'm going to be in a Broadway show, and the first Broadway show I'm going to be in will be directed by George Abbott. Thank you very much." I always held that in the back of my mind. It kind of makes you wonder. So that last part, why would it make her wonder? Because that's exactly what happened to her when she got to New York City. She said that before she got there. Ask and you're going to receive. She has appeared in over 57 TV shows. She has made 19 major motion pictures. She has appeared in about 4 Broadway shows. She has Emmy Awards. She has Golden Globe Awards. She's received the Kennedy Center Honors. She's got a Peabody Award. President George W. Bush awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which, by the way, is very close to where she first worked as an usher back in 1957. But most of all, and probably what is most important to Carol herself, is that America, if not the world, is in love and will always be in love with the truly wonderful Carol Burnett. I want to thank you for joining me to this heartfelt tribute to the great Carol Burnett. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host. We'll see you on another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. Thank you so much for tuning in.